I just checked my messages on Messenger and I received a message privately from Michael, and the question posed was, do I feel afraid out here? Am I afraid of dying out here? Especially where I'm alone. Mike, I'm going to tell you a little story about a group of children back in 1983, Bronx, New York. Back in 1983 in the Bronx, New York, there were 6 kids that were homeless. They were on the street. All of them were either thrown away by their families or ran away because of problems at home. These kids, they had nobody but themselves. They stole by nighttime to survive. They stole food, clothing. Sometimes they steal cardboard boxes out of dumpsters so they'd have a place to stay. They chose to hang around each other constantly as opposed to separate. Well, one night, this was mid-October, it was very cold, and they were on Kruger Ave, not too far from the Conservation Center. And they were standing in front of a small fire that was in a barrel. And a little brown van pulls up. It was a Dodge van, type of the doors that swing open. Out of the van was 4 Italian men, average build. One of them was muscular. Well, they started approaching the kids, and these kids, thinking nothing of it because it's commonality, they're in the Bronx. They just stayed around the fire trying to get warm. Well, the guys started small talk. Well, realizing the kids didn't know what small talk was, the kids paid very close attention, fascinated that somebody actually stopped talk with them. These guys decided to just ask questions like, where you're from, why you on the street, where your parents live, where'd you go to school, how old are you? And when the kids, pretty much in agreement, all stated, they didn't have anybody but themselves, they were homeless, and they were just trying to get warm. Well, after about 10-15 minutes of small talk, the guys started posing the question, well, we have a nice place, and it's warm, it's safe, it's private. You can come with us, take a nice hot shower, plenty of food, plenty of sodas, plenty of candy, watch cartoons, nice soft beds. Well, these kids, being that they were just young and had no place to go, they were all on the streets, they took them up on the offer. Well, they all piled into the van. 2 of the guys crawled in the back with the kids. After about 10 minutes on the road, one of the kids spoke up and asked where the place was, and the driver glanced over his shoulder casually and said, "Shut up, kids, you'll get there when we get there." Being that the possibility of a nice warm bed and some food, the kids didn't think nothing of it. About 45 minutes later, one of the kids noticed they passed a sign that said Long Island. And a couple minutes later, they turned onto a street called Ocean Avenue. Just a couple minutes down Ocean Avenue, around a huge corner, this van pulls into this driveway. It's a long driveway, curved all the way to the right. Building was white, had a nice shed attached to it. All the windows are closed, the blinds were down, drapes. So the van backs in to this little corner, and all the guys sort of lock the doors except for the very back doors, and one of the guys gets out, opens the back door. Well, these kids think nothing of it. They pile out, eager to get some food, eager to get warm. It wasn't until that point that one of the little boys named Toby Sampson realized that these Italian men were looking all around, trying to keep everybody real quiet. The guy closest to the van, closest to the kids, pulled out a long knife, and that's when all the kids realized there was a problem. One of the boys, the one I just mentioned, Toby Sampson, was sliced across the arm. The rest of the kids ran. They found themselves in a little corner, but there was a small fence, a metal fence. They were able to get over it fairly quickly. Being that you're petrified and you're just a little kid, adrenaline runs through you, so obviously you run like Olympic sprinters. As the kids got down the road, they stayed pretty much on the side, away from traffic, so nobody would see them. And they kept going and going and going. That's when they realized Toby wasn't with them. Being they were all afraid, they didn't dare to go back, so they kept going. It wasn't until they got down towards the bridge on the right-hand side, heading out on Long Island, that they realized how close to death they came. They all kind of just looked at each other without saying a single word, and they all seemed to know what they were thinking. What happened to Toby? To answer your question, Mike, I want to put it into contrast the story I just told you. Yes, that story is very hard to believe, and it would be, unless you happen to be one of those boys. Toby was my best friend as a kid. I didn't have that many friends. It was later learned that his body was found in the East River. He'd been gutted. Do I feel afraid up here? Alone? Afraid that I'm going to die? The answer is no. I'll never fear death again. Like I said, very hard story to believe, isn't it? And it would be. Unless you happen to be one of those little boys that escaped barely with your life. I grew up on the streets. I grew up on the streets in New York, Kruger Ave, Bronx, New York. Hung around Manhattan, Greenwich Village. Used to play at the World Trade Towers. Why do I mention that? Because it's ironic that nearly 40 years later, I remember it as if it happened just this morning. To answer your question, no, I will never fear death again. I don't know where the other boys went to. We all grew up and went our separate ways very quickly. I guess you can say that we became adults as kids. That one night changed our lives forever. So as I am out here in the woods alone, the only thing that bothers me is the fact that I am alone. The fear of dying, the fear of death, that, Michael, left me a long time ago. I'm not saying I want to die, but I'm prepared for it because I've made amends with my Maker. No, I don't fear death. I think it's more life that I fear more than death. I used to spend all my life as a little teeny child running from the possibility of death, checking my closet at night when I was able to be home, looking under my bed before I went to sleep, closing the windows, make sure it was locked, pull the shade down, keep out the boogeyman. But on that night in October, I realized the boogeyman of those around us. Why don't I accept help from people in the way that most people would? when you barely escape with your very life, even as a little teeny kid, because somebody offered to help you, you kind of hesitate to even accept somebody's words as true. There's an old saying, and I'm going to say it now, and I'm never going to say it again on a video. It is not death that we should fear, it is the living, those around us, because we don't know what their intentions are. Because myself and my best friends, and my ultimate best friend, chose to accept the advice and the potential help from someone around us, it almost cost our lives, and one of us it did. My best friend, my ultimate best friend, paid the price. He was gutted like a deer. I hope this answers your question, Michael. And for everybody else watching this, if you have children, do yourself one of the biggest favors you'll ever do. Walk up to them right now and hug them. Tell them you love them. Because you just might save their life.